Hello there, all of you absolutely lovely people. Once again, this is Dax, and today we're going to be talking about animal totems. When I was a small child, my parents took me over to visit a neighbor. And while my parents were sitting on the front porch talking to this neighbor, I was out playing in their front yard. An adjacent house opens their front door, and a big black dog comes tearing out that front door, straight at me. He didn't even look anywhere else. He just made a beeline for me, and he just tore into me. I was probably about 4 years old when I got attacked by this dog. Now, move forward in time to only a few years ago. I was out on one of my late night walks. I take these all the time. And while out on this late night walk, I started thinking to myself about how as a small child I got mauled by this dog, and about how it has affected my opinion of dogs ever since. And after thinking about this for a while, I made the decision to forgive Dog Spirit. The instant I forgave Dog Spirit, a big black dog appears in the street that I was walking down, and he tears out straight towards me. Just makes a beeline towards me, exactly like the dog that mauled me when I was a small child. And this dog charged me, and he proceeded to start happily licking my hand. Just playfully licking my hand. Just slobbered out my hand. There was just goo dripping off my fingertips. But then this big black dog proceeded to happily prance in a circle around me, constantly looking back at me with that love of family look in his eyes, the way dogs do. And I knew that Dog Spirit was grateful to me for my decision to forgive him for the way he mauled me when I was a small child. This is a magical world that we live in, and animal spirits will communicate to you through synchronicity. They will communicate to you through actions and events. Now, when it comes to contacting an animal spirit, if you're a beginner, there's a sequence that I like to go through to make certain that the animal really is contacting you. Now, later on, as you become more adept at communication with animal totems, this will change. You will gain a gnosis. You will simply know right away if the animal spirit is contacting you. But when you're a beginner, I like to divide the communication process into 3 stages. You see, animals will approach you in an out-of-character form, something unusual. For example, if you walk by a chicken coop, and there are chickens in the coop, well, they're always in the coop. That is not a communication from chicken spirit. However, if you're laying there in bed, and a rooster hops up on your windowsill, and they never do that, then that is an out-of-place behavior from this animal totem. When you're a beginner, if that happens once, it is simply an interesting occurrence. Now, if you have 2 out-of-place occurrences within a short period of time, now it's a coincidence, assuming, of course, that you actually believe in coincidences. But if it happens 3 times, then that animal totem is trying to communicate to you. And it is now up to you to find out what this spirit is trying to tell you. Once again, as you become more adept at communication with animal totems, you'll gain a gnosis. You'll get to the point where an animal can appear for the first time, and you'll instantly know whether that animal is speaking to you or not. But until you reach that stage, go on ahead and use the 3 contact rule. First time, it's just interesting. 2 times, it's a coincidence. 3 times, it's communication. Now, the animal does not have to personally approach you in order for this communication to be happening. It could be a picture that's out of place that simply calls your attention to it. You could be walking by a radio, and someone on the radio happens to name this animal in a way that catches your attention. All of these are communication. The reason why this is important is because not only does it open you up to additional communication to animals, it also opens you up to communication with animals that you cannot see personally and animals that have gone extinct. For example, Dinosaurs have animal totems. Dinosaurs can communicate to you through spirit, just like a dog or a raccoon or a chickadee or a moth. Once you have learned how to contact an animal spirit, it is also possible to make agreements with animal totems. For example, here a couple of years ago, I had a couple of tree saplings up here in the front yard. And every night, the instant that these trees would grow any leaves or whatever, I would have this herd of deer come into my front yard at night, and they would just devour all the leaves off these saplings, and then they would move on. This would kill the tree saplings. I kept having these tree saplings die because these deer would always come in and eat the green foliage off of them, leaving them with no ability for photosynthesis, no ability to process air, none of this. Cages didn't work, distractions didn't work. They always came in and killed my trees. So I made an agreement with Deer Totem. You can do this through meditation, simply connecting your soul with the oversoul of whatever animal it is you're trying to contact, and you can carry on a psychic conversation with them. But I decided to contact Deer Totem, and I made an agreement. I made the agreement that I will leave those deer alone if they would leave alone those tree saplings. And that night, they left my trees alone, and they have never touched those trees since. It's been a couple of years now. They have always left those trees alone. But this only works if you are making an agreement with an equal. In other words, you cannot think of deer as being a dumb animal who's beneath you, and you can't think of them as being a deity that's above you either. It needs to be two equals making negotiations. And you have to be honest. You have to actually mean what you say. I was sincere when I said, I will leave those deer alone if they leave my trees alone. That's what caused the agreement to work, was the sincerity of an agreement between equals. And Deer Spirit has honored that agreement, because I have honored the agreement too. There are other cases of people who have done this. There's a gentleman that I spoke to once. He owns a ranch, and he had these rabbits that would come into his ranch. And these coyotes, the name changes depending on what part of the world you live in, but he had these coyotes that would come into his farm, and they would devour all the rabbits. And this rancher wanted these rabbits to be safe while they were in the vicinity of his house. So he made an agreement with Coyote Totem, much the same way I did with Deer Totem. He made an agreement between two equals, making sincere negotiations, saying he will leave the coyotes alone, and those coyotes are free to kill rabbits till their heart's content, as long as they are a certain distance from his house. But the instant they get within that distance of his home, he wants Coyote Spirit to leave those rabbits alone. And in exchange, he will not hunt coyotes. He made this agreement, and just like my agreement with Deer Spirit, Coyote Spirit chose to honor this agreement. So when you become more advanced in communicating with animal totems, you will be able to negotiate with these animal totems under the condition that you are equals and you are sincere in what you are agreeing to. Now, obviously, one of the things that we need to discuss here is, what is an animal spirit? What is an animal totem? Well, in order to get into that, we need to discuss the soul and how it works. And yes, human beings are not the only creature who has a soul. Everything has a soul. But those souls seem to exist in different layers. First of all, there is the individual layer, which, as a human being, that's what we think of our souls as being. You are you, you're an individual. You as an individual have your own individual soul. That is the individual layer of the soul. Above that level, you've got the species level of the soul. In other words, the entire human species has one oversoul. Now, there are far more levels, layers, groupings, and families of souls than that, but for the sake of this conversation, we're going to make that leap. There is your individual soul, and then there is the oversoul of the entire human species. That one soul that is shared by the entire human race, that is human totem. So when I'm talking about dealing with deer spirit or monkey totem or anything like that, that's what I'm talking about. I am talking about communication and negotiation with the oversoul of that entire species. Then of course the soul layers go on above that. For instance, planet Earth has an oversoul. There is a totem to the planet that we live on that branches out and forms the oversouls of all the different animal totems. So we're all connected by Earth totem. And of course it also proceeds to go on up from there into solar systems, galaxies, galactic clusters, etc., 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 all the way up to the Brahmin, which is the consciousness of everything. The Brahmin or the Akasha isn't really something that our brains can comprehend, but your soul goes all the way up to that level. You are simply a subdivision of all these other oversouls. So anyway, I'm going to start discussing different ways that you can communicate with animal spirit, methods where you don't have to just simply sit back and wait for animal totem to come to you. You can go out to them. And one way that you can do this is to create for yourself a deck of oracle cards. This is surprisingly easy to do. All that you have to do to create your own deck of cards, you just need a Sharpie, a notebook, and a deck of playing cards, and that's it. You take a deck of playing cards, and you hold it to your heart, and you imbue a prayer into that deck of cards. And what you're praying for is let the animal spirits that want to be a part of your deck of cards will start coming to you and communicating their meaning to you. What you do is, as an animal comes forward, like let's say, for example, that fruit bat kept appearing in your mind over and over. You would take that top deck of cards, and on the face, you would take the Sharpie and you would write fruit bat. And then in your notebook, you would write down the word fruit bat, and after a dash, you would just write down all the meanings for fruit bat that came to you in your meditation, like fruit bat, health, family, the ability to travel long distances, the ability to see at night. You would just, if those ideas popped into your head, that's what you would write down in your notebook. And then you'd set that card aside, and you would meditate for the next animal. And you would keep doing that for as long as you want. If you only wind up with a deck of 3 cards, then fine. You've only got a deck of 3 cards. On the other hand, if you have to go out and buy additional decks of playing cards, you do that too. But that is how you can create your own oracle deck of cards. And then at that point, you simply use your oracle deck the same way that you would use any other oracle deck of cards. Whenever you want communication from the animal totems, you would simply hold that deck to your heart, shuffle it, and then draw a card, and that's the animal talking to me. I'm being communicated with by Fiddler Crab. And what does the notebook down here say about Fiddler Crab? Well, it says that my defenses are up too high. I need to lower my defenses so that what needs to get in can. And you would go, okay, that's a communication from that animal totem. And that's just how that deck of cards works. You use it just like any other oracle deck. It's just a deck of playing cards that you've written names on and recorded the meaning of those different animals. Now, of course, another way to communicate with animal totems is through meditation. And here in a few minutes, I am going to walk you through a meditation on how to contact animal totems yourself. Before I get into this, I want to define for you a term called castle building. When it comes to meditation, remote viewing, anything like that, castle building is one of the most important things that you can know about. Castle building is a term that I first heard of when reading a book called The Seventh Sense by Lynn Buchanan. Lynn Buchanan used to be a remote viewer, a psychic spy for the U.S. military, and he wrote this book to describe his experiences as a remote viewer. Now, one thing about this book, it is not a how-to book. It is simply a description of what his life was like when he was doing this. The book does, however, have a few exercises in the back if you want to read the book and go through those. But for the most part, if your goal is to become a psychic spy, then this is probably not the book for you. But he kept bringing up the term castle building in this book. What castle building is, when you see a vision, people are usually not happy to simply see what's in the vision. After they see the vision, they start adding on to things that they want to be there. They start piling on false meanings onto the vision that they actually saw. An example of this is Lynn Buchanan would describe a sequence where you're remote viewing. You see a hallway. The hallway is very clean. It's white. There are people walking around in white lab coats. Aha, we're at a hospital, and there are people being rushed around being treated on, and people are treating disease and illnesses and all of this. Well, if you break down what I just described to you, the only portion of that description that I just gave to you that was actually a part of the vision was a hallway, it was white, and there were people in lab coats. That is the only part of it that was the vision. Everything else, the aha, we're at a hospital, there are people being treated for illnesses and injuries, those people are doctors. All of that was made up by the viewer. None of that is what the viewer actually saw. They saw a hallway and people with lab coats, and they castle built a hospital scene. This is something you need to be very careful of whenever you're dealing with anything involving visions. Be careful of castle building. Make certain that what you're describing is the vision that you actually saw and not the vision that you're assuming it to be. So just make certain that when you're doing anything that involves seeing a vision, when it comes to remote viewing, when it comes to psychic interaction, when it comes to remembering what your dreams were, any of this, communicating with an animal totem, make certain that you're not castle building. Stay very focused and mentally disciplined to the point where you can recognize the difference between what you're seeing and what you are creating. And that will make all the difference in the world in how accurate your vision is. So now that I've explained castle building, we're going to get to the meditation. This is a basic, generalized meditation for any kind of animal totem. I've got many videos on my site that deal with specific totems, and each of these specific totem videos will have a meditation very similar to this, but for that specific animal at the end of the video. So if you want something more specific, watch the specific video for those animals. But this one will be general and generic, something that you can use for pretty much any animal totem that you want to connect with. The first thing that you've got to do is close your eyes and quiet the mind. When you calm down the mind, there will be chatter. There will be thoughts flowing through your head. There will be more thoughts if you are new to this. As you become more advanced, more skilled, more experienced, there will be less commotion in your mind. It will be more calm, more quiet. But right now the goal is to calm the mind. quiet the mind. And now what you do is you choose the animal that you want to meditate on. I've chosen my animal, you choose yours. And just visualize that animal in your mind's eye. The more experienced at this you become, the more difficult it will be to distract you from this animal. The more experienced you become, the more three-dimensional and holographic and physically appearing this vision in your mind will be. But now what you need to do is you need to start imagining that you are that animal. Whatever this animal is, imagine yourself to be in the form of that animal. Instead of imagining yourself being in the form of a human being, a human being, got a head, torso, 2 legs, 2 arms, we've got hands, we've got 2 feet, our nose is in a certain way, our eyes function a certain way. We're basically bald from the forehead down, so there's that. These are the traits that a human has. Start imagining yourself to have the traits of the animal that you're envisioning. Imagine this animal. How many legs does this animal have? Imagine your limbs being in the configuration. Is it a 4-legged animal? Is it a 6-legged animal? Is it an 8-legged animal? Does the animal have any legs? Use your active, disciplined imagination to configure your body to that of the animal you are envisioning. What are your teeth like? Do you have fur? Do you have scales? Do you live in a shell? Do you live in the water? Do you live in the air? Do you live on the ground? Do you live in the trees? Do you have feathers? Your eyes. How many eyes do you have? How do you perceive the world? What is your vision like? What is your sense of smell like? Are you an animal that primarily sniffs its way through life? Go into all these traits and build yourself a virtual body that you inhabit. And now it is important to be aware of the castle building that I warned you of earlier, because so far what you have created in the vision has been intentional. You have created yourself the body of the animal that you are attempting to contact. You are the animal. You are not talking to the animal. You are the animal. Now you open your virtual eyes. You open the eyes of the animal, assuming the animal can see. If the animal cannot see, simply open whatever senses they use to perceive the world. Open your senses, and as this animal, look around. And remember the dangers of castle building. Do not castle build. Watch your visions and simply observe what the vision is. Do not add to the vision. Do not manipulate the vision. One of the things that people will do that will cause them to castle build is they will say, well, that's not right, that's not possible, that can't be it, so let's change it to something else. That is castle building. Do not castle build. Simply open the eyes of your animal body, or ears, or nose, and simply perceive your surroundings. Practice doing this. Practice observing the vision that you actually see. And now, allow the you that is this animal to start talking to the you that is a human, and carry on a conversation between the two selves. Ask your animal self a question, and then observe the true vision that you see as your animal self goes about answering your question. And open yourself to the animal communicating back to you whatever it is that this version of you wants to say. And keep doing this until you receive the answers you're looking for. Once again, I am Dax. I love you all very much. Always remember, you are important, you are loved, your needs are valid, and the same is also true of everyone else, including all the animals whom we share this lovely planet with. Until next time, my friends.